So the
So
second,
online assessments.
thank you. The second talk's a bit shorter for several reasons. One reason is that uh, I haven't had too much time to actually analyze the data fully for this because, as I say, we all got looked unwell, and my daughter's wedding was in there as well. But I've got some things here. So, and this is not probably new to many of you. I'm sure most of us have thought about this. So I'm looking here at the pros and cons of online assessments and attitudes of students and staff here. And there were some things that were a bit surprising for me, actually. So the first is that we well know that COVID has actually forced us to rethink how we assess. And all the assessments were online, at least in 2020, and to this still are, because since we still have an online cohort of students that is not insignificant, we still need to make sure they provide them with some form of assessment that's online. And there are all kinds of consistency and equity things here as well that need to be taken care of if you assess the online students differently from the face-to-face cohort. So the question is that, and this is part of the theme of this workshop, is how do we proceed from here? What's the best way forward post-COVID regarding assessment? Is there still a place for online assessments? And if there is, how do we proceed from there? And I see that the last session is about who decides these kinds of things. It will be interesting as well to hear. So there are three parts to this talk. Very quickly, and as I say, this is a little shorter, is what are the pros and cons for online assessments? What types of assessments have been used? And what are the opinions of staff and students regarding online assessments? And our focus essentially is on LMS assessments and other forms of online assessments. So the pros and cons of online assessments. The first is, as far as online assessments are concerned, this is semester assessments in particular, as well as exam assessments. Is for semester assessments, having 2 or 3 short tests in a semester for a unit requires you to book venues that are often hard to find. I remember doing this for first year classes when I was teaching the first year test unit, and I'd pick Saturdays for these because at least the venues were available. You got a class of something like 600 students. Trying to find the venues in the week is difficult. So I did that on the weekends. Then you're going to find invigilators, organize them and pay them. You're going to print off 600 papers, making sure they're all printed and stapled properly, then have them delivered to the exam or the test venues, collect them all those kinds of things here. Make sure students are all and supervising them carefully enough to make sure they don't cheat. There also are other issues I'll discuss as we go through here. And the various forms of assessment, if it's online, makes it easy as well, because you can actually set different lengths of time for the exam for different students who might have special needs. You can, in fact, set different times altogether. So you can have some students doing assessments in the morning, some in the evening and afternoon. You can still time them. And of course, because it's online, you can adapt them for online students just as easily without any extra work. The other thing is, the semester assessments or even exams can be easily graded using some rubric on LMS or some whatever learning system you have. So marking is easier. You can use the same rubric again and again by modifying them. That doesn't take too much work here. You don't have to carry around this pile of few hundred scripts to mark as you go through this. So if you have an exam you're marking, for example, for 500 students, and you've got a team marking it for you, then you're going to have some way of sharing the scripts between the markers, and then people pick up and put back scripts, all those kinds of things here. Here it's online marking, no need for those kinds of things, and several markers can mark simultaneously. There are no lost scripts, and that's not that's happened in the past. A student will claim I was in the exam, my script is lost. In fact, some of them are genuine as well. And of course, I'm not sure how experience is, but my experience is that if you've got a class of 500 students and you have 3 short tests a semester, by the end of the semester, you've got something like, a good 1,000 or at least a few hundred scripts lying around. Only about, a third or 40% of students ever pick up their scripts. The rest are just lying there, and you dump them in the end of semester. So you don't have these issues either. The other ones are that for exams in particular, all of the above also apply, but we know that how appeals work. Appeals from students when the exam results are released are usually in the time where we're out on conferences or we're on leave, in the late November, early December period. And so if a student contacts you about what we call the level 1 appeal, where you're required to discuss the exam paper with the student, then you aren't there, and the hard copy of the exam paper is in your office somewhere. So you've got to either get a colleague to do it or make some other arrangements. So here it doesn't matter because it's online. You can just get the student on Zoom or whatever else and go through the paper with the student online straight away. So that makes handling appeals very, very much easier. Types of assessment. Well, I had a survey of our university and a survey of the students in our department and the students in our department. Yes, all students doing any maths units at all, and the staff in our department. So 372 students from across the years took the survey and responded to the survey, and 15 of our staff. Now, 15 doesn't sound like many staff, but remember, we only have about 19 full-time staff these days in our department, so that was quite a lot. So 372 students responded to this. And here are some quick results from the surveys. All the assessment answers were online. 188 students responded that their exams were multiple choice, or numerical, or short answer, and they were answered online. There were 26 that the multiple choice short answers that were scanned and submitted online afterwards. And there were 148 standard exams delivered online. So the exam paper was online. The students had to write the answers on pieces of paper and then scan them and put them in, submit them online. So this was the breakdown of the kinds of exams they had. Looks like there were quite a few multiple choice or short answer ones. So very briefly, attitudes and opinions here. Of the students, 82% thought the exam type was appropriate. Now, this was a bit surprising to me. I thought maybe few would think that was the case. 67% thought MC style allowed them to show that they learned. Now, in the first one, when they showed the exam type was appropriate, I suspect what they meant was, maybe my words aren't quite right there. I think what they meant was that the exam, the way it was conducted online was appropriate, but not the exam format itself. So the MC style, 67% thought was okay. It allowed them to learn, to show what they learned. Of the short answer numerical ones, 68% thought that it was also appropriate and allowed them to show what they learned. 84% thought that online delivered and scanned exams, so where the student actually wrote on pieces of paper, where it was not just MCs or numerical and short answers, but full answers, allowed them to show that showed what they had learned. Student comments in general, I did have a section of comments here. Generally, they were not favorable for online assessments. Many thought that MC was inappropriate as a question format because, excuse me, it didn't allow follow-through marks, and that maths exams should not be MC. And there are similar comments for the numerical answers. So of course, MC and numerical answers are very quickly, easily marked online, and so many exams were entirely just MC and numerical answers in our department. The other comment was that if the exam paper is delivered online, you're writing on pieces of paper, that's difficult because you're reading the question online and writing the answers on pieces of paper. The way most of our exams are run these days is, and I must claim that I was the first to do this in our department at least, is the students would write the exam paper itself. The questions were there with space for the exam, for the solutions. And so the question and solutions were together. So here now, suddenly the paper was online and the solutions were written on pieces of paper. So they found reading on the screen and writing on the paper was difficult. Scanning solutions were not liked at all. Most of them said that to scan solutions later was hard. Scanners didn't work. They didn't have appropriate scanners. Some of them just used something like a mobile phone to scan, and that didn't scan very well. Some others actually had exams where the solutions had to be typed online onto the computer. And there's all kinds of difficulties with that. First, doing the thing on paper and then transferring to the computer was difficult. When you solve the equations, of course, okay, so most of us may be able to solve simple equations as we write them out on a LaTeX or whatever else. But more difficult thing has to be worked out before, and especially for students. So doing those, essentially, they said they doubled the work. And one of our staff actually had a particular, if you like, math language like LaTeX or similar, where he wanted students to write the exam solutions in that particular format. The students complained, in at least my survey, that meant that to learn the math and this language as well for the exam, and they weren't particularly appreciative of that. And the last is that Some units had MC for semester assessments, which was again simple to organize and mark, where the exam was written, and so they suddenly found an entirely different format of assessment for the exam, unlike what they had experience with earlier. Staff opinions of the 15, they overwhelmingly thought, I was surprised here, that the final exam format allowed them to test student knowledge. I was surprised at that. I thought most of them would say no, it was not appropriate. They also thought the final exam format was appropriate, a way to test their unit. And this was again surprising. It didn't depend on staff age or staff level. So I thought that maybe the older staff would think that this is terrible, you know, maths should be done the way we've always done the thing. But they actually are quite taken with this. They didn't mind this at all. In conclusion, students seem more against the online assessment than staff. Now, as I said earlier, one of the things with online assessments where it's MC or numerical answers is it does take a lot of marking load away. Now, in some units in our department, the assessment is entirely MC and has been even before COVID, because while it might take a little while to prepare these MC exams, of course, the marking is dead easy. The students also in the comments, although the comments were focused towards assessments, they did say they were very much more keen to return to face-to-face sessions, class sessions. This is tutor sessions and lecture sessions. And in particular, in the comments, they did not like the MC and numerical answers at all, because they did say that it meant they could not show what they'd learned. If they made a mistake with something there were no follow-through marks. And they thought that math should be where the marks are not just for the answers, but for methods. Interesting, the students said this and not the staff. That's what I've got, Deb, so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank